Meghan Atherton, everybody.
As I've been introduced, my name is Megan. I work here at Concordia. I'm a career counselor at Your Career Services. How many of you have heard of CAPS before? Okay, a couple. That's a good sign. Part of my job is I work with students, to help them sort of figure out their career paths. So if they're a little bit confused, I sit down with them, we have conversations about sorting out where you want to go. Another part of my job, which is what I'm here tonight for, is that I also work with students to help them get ready to enter the world of work. So I help with resumes, I help with cover letters, I help with interview skills, which is what I'm here to do tonight. So, following up from the previous presentation, what do you think the purpose is of an interview? Anybody? Yep.
Initial encounter, maybe?
Initial,
in person?
Yep, face-to-face encounters. Yep. Anything else? Yep.
Verifying the resume, the content of the resume.
Yep, that's part of it too. They want to, fact check. Are you who you say you are on paper? Yes.
Ultimately, you're trying to score the job that you're going for, right?
Exactly. But how do you think you do that? What's if you think about the last presentation and maybe the video, what were they talking about? What was the sort of key element that they were talking about? Yeah.
To tell your story.
Exactly. So your interview is really about bringing your story to life. It's about making your experience, who you are, really come alive, and communicating that sort of passion, that enthusiasm to the potential employer. So, what is a job interview? Well, a job interview draws the connection between your skills and the position. So you want to make the connection between what you have to offer and that position. It's also a chance where you get to demonstrate your interest in that position. So really make it sort of come alive. Also to show that you've done your research. You know who this employer is. You know what they are all about. You have a good understanding of what it is you would be doing in that position. You don't have to know all the ins and outs, but you have a good sense of what it's all about. And finally, it's also an opportunity for you to determine if this is a right fit for you. Oftentimes we go into these things going, oh, it's all about them picking me, but maybe, they're not the right place for you to be working in. So it's also getting a sense of, is this somebody that I can see myself working for? So, as talked about earlier, the resume is really about the what. These are your facts. These are your skills that you have. This is what you've learned. These are the hands-on job experience that you've got. The interviews really answer the how and the why. They ask you to go into more detail about what you did, to draw connections, to make as I said before, make it come alive. Does the company want to hire you? So they're really getting at can you actually do the job? Do you actually have those skills? Will you do the job? Do you have the motivation? Are you passionate? Will we be able to count on you? And thirdly, will you fit in? And these sort of parameters depend on the type of organization that you're looking at. Are they an organization that works as a team, or is it more sort of individual work? Are they 9 to 5, or are they all over the map? These are sort of things. Will you be able to fit within our community? So, what you need to do before you're going into the interview is you need to get prepared. And the first thing you need to do is you need to know yourself and study the job description so that you can make those connections. The second thing you want to do is you want to research the employer, which some of this you would have already done when you were preparing your resume. But you want to do it again, or check your facts and make sure you have the right data, so to speak. And then you want to practice. So what do you need to do to get to know yourself and know the job description? Well, the job description is pretty straightforward. Hopefully, in most cases, they will list the criteria. They will also list the tasks that you will be asked to do. So you can take a look at that and to identify the skills and experience that are relevant to this position. Oftentimes what I have students do is I take the job description itself and we try and connect, we look at each description that they provided and we talk about what skills are they asking for, what are they looking for, what do they want to you to be able to demonstrate, so that you can actually see it, you know, in terms of what they're asking for. You also want to then study your resume and know your strengths and weaknesses inside and out, so that you can then match it to what the employer's looking for. And then and as part of this process, you're going to be identifying what skills you have, what skills can you bring to this company, and how can you demonstrate them? How can you show that you have these skills? What proof do you have? How do you make them come alive? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So knowing yourself, you know, you want to know your values, your skills, your interests, your personality traits, your accomplishments, to really have a sense of who you are, what you're bringing forward, and also what you're looking for in terms of an employer. You want to analyze the items on your resume in terms of your skills, abilities, and attributes. Basically, anything on your resume is fair game. So they can bring it up in an interview context, and therefore they can ask you questions about it. So you want to know them inside and out. You can prepare an outline, you know, on what you want to convey. What are the next part, your top 10. What are the top 10 things you want this employer to know about you? And then you also want to think about, you know, short-term and long-term goals. Where do you see yourself going in the future? Where do you see yourself in this organization? You may have goals that will be outside of this context of this job, and that's okay. But you want to sort of think about, well, what can I bring to this company? Knowing yourself, identifying your skills. It was talked about a little bit earlier. I've been on a lot of presentations today, so I can't remember if this was one of them before. But the idea of your skill set. We often talk about your hard skills, which is your technical skills, which is your really job, concrete skills. But sometimes we don't talk a lot about what we call your soft skills. We seem to be talking about it more and more, which is great. And employers are also looking at these. Can you communicate? What are your interpersonal skills like? Do you take initiative? Are you adaptable or flexible? Can you work as a member of a team? These are other types of skills that you want to bring in to your examples that you use when you're talking about your work experience and things like that, as on the resume. You want to make sure that these are clear. Is there any questions on any of this? I know I'm talking pretty quickly here, but makes sense? Yeah. The next thing you want to do is you want to research the employer. You want to know everything and anything you can about this potential employer. What are their products? Who are their clients? What's the structure of the organization? What's the corporate culture like? Is it, do you show up in suits? Or are jeans okay? These types of things. Has there been any recent news articles about them? You want to be in the know about this organization. Good places to look would be their company websites, LinkedIn, any of the social media, Twitter, Facebook. You guys probably know better than I do. The CRC, an acronym. Here at Concordia, you have access to the Career Resource Center, which is the CRC. It is located in H440. It has a library full of career resources and a fabulous librarian, and there was lots. So if you have any questions, if you want to know more about companies, you can go to her, in addition to all the other stuff. You can also talk to people who have worked there. Previous employers they may have one-sided opinions, but it's still some information. The ICRIQ is a Quebec-specific organization that talks about industry. So they have the list of the companies, they have information about all the organizations working in Quebec. In addition to that, we have the Glassdoor, which is another site that does company reviews, talks about their salaries. Oftentimes there's opinion posts about the organization. It's a great place to get information on the organization. So, what next? Then you want to prepare and practice your interview questions. So what I have up here is what we call your traditional questions. These are very standard. Most interviewers will use some of these. These are really about getting to know you. As you can tell by the first one. Tell me about yourself. Oh boy, where do I start? You want to think about that before that gets thrown at you. On average, for these questions, you're looking at about 30 seconds to a minute to respond. That's sort of what the average is. And they really focus on, as I mentioned before, getting to know you. Why are you interested in this organization? What is your motivation? What's your passion? Your strengths and weaknesses. Now this one can be tricky. Strengths generally is pretty straightforward. Things I'm good at. Weaknesses. Oh, I don't want to talk about things I'm not good at. How do we talk about the things we're not good at? This is a tricky question. But what you would want to do is you would want to pick something that either you are actively improving. I'll give you an example. Maybe I had a student that's public speaking. Something that they were terrified of. But they've joined Toastmasters, which is an organization that helps people learn to overcome their fears of public speaking. So they're actively making it better. They're actively doing something to improve it. Another example or another thing you would want to pick for a weakness is something that is seen as a negative or a positive. So something you can put a positive spin onto. And in general, for your weaknesses, you want to pick something that's not going to impact the type of work you're doing. Those are just some. But if you want to talk more about those, you can book an appointment with an advisor or me, and we can talk some more about your interview questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I had a student once that told an interviewer that they were going to go to grad school in 6 months' time. Do you think they got the job? No. What are you thinking? First of all, there was some other stuff, but that's a whole other story. This question is really about what's your commitment like. Where do you see yourself with us for a while? And why should we hire you? This one often comes up near the end, and it's a great question to sort of summarize everything you've already said and throw in anything that you haven't had a chance to say or you forgot about. And it's really articulating what separates you or makes you stand out over somebody else. And it's really your story, and also your fit with that organization. In addition to our traditional questions, interviews also consist of what we call behavior questions. These are looking at your specific behaviors in specific situations. How did you respond? How do you react? When? Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a colleague, and how did you resolve it?
I remember that question.
In these situations, how do I frame it? There's not really a right or a wrong answer, but there's better answers. Okay. They're looking at things like your professionalism. They're looking at your ability to problem solve. They're looking at your ability to assert yourself. Take initiative. And it's going to focus on areas that this employer is seeking. Describe a stressful situation, how you handle it. Tell me about a problem you solved and the steps you used to solve it. So some of these can be vague, but some of them can also be very, very specific. What would you do if a client was upset with your service? They didn't like what you prescribed or what have you. How would you handle that? And if you don't have specific experiences in those situations, it's okay to say, well, that you don't, but then you frame it as, but if I did, here's what I would do. So, more examples of questions. Describe a situation when you were criticized and how did you handle it? When working on multiple projects, how do you set priorities? Tell me about a time in which you developed an idea or a creation. So you get the sense of that they're looking at specific examples of behavior. So, how much time?
You got 5 minutes.
Okay. What I thought we'd do is just, I have copies of my PowerPoint here and a handout, so if you guys want it at the end, you can pick it up. But I think a nice sort of fun thing to do is to turn to your neighbor and ask each other a behavioral question and respond using the STAR approach. Now the STAR approach is something to help give you some focus to a question. The S and the T is the situation. So you provide a short overview of what happened. Then you move into an action. What did you do? What were the steps you took? And then finally, what was the result? So what I suggest doing is turning to a partner. I'm going to go back to the practice of behavioral questions. You pick one, decide to use it, and then give it a good try. All right? Ready, set,
Go!
go!
Or whatever I have to talk about. So I'll do that first, and then I'll do what's left. And at work, like I said, I work at the hospital. If I have to prioritize, well, obviously I will go with like the one that's the most like challenging.
It's a research center.
Yeah.
This was set up.
By the way, my name is Eve.
Okay, good. From my laptop, but I'll switch my laptop. Okay, no, sorry.
Yeah, but
I'll plug it in. That's should
now you can do that. That's why I gave it to her. Yeah, I just read on the top because there's a file. One thing is all the time. You don't know where to find take your time and not right.
At first, actually, I didn't do one. Like, I was getting so stressed, I couldn't do it. But finally, I started why it's very important for me. And like, I was doing some work as long as they said it very and the result was they really understood. I think once they saw that I was very professional, very serious, at least I didn't really get
Right, exactly.
Oh, like, okay. Oh, well.
so like the college because right now so I can around
Okay, another 30 seconds.
but I think like walk out the door and what was your the action at least I can get it for you.
Another quick question. What do you see yourself in 5 years? If someone like said the facts. So if that's in your head, you're going to interview like in 6 months next year. So like if you tell them right in front of the interview, like about doing this, or not say anything until like 6 months in. Same thing like with me and I use most back interviews are down the line. None of those interviews are supposed to be on so far. Exactly. Even if you don't, even if something comes something
And in terms of grad school, you can talk about where you would like to go, like what you'd like to do some further education in these areas. You never know, maybe they'll support you.
okay, right. Here's
You're not going to write that.
yeah, there's always a way to say it,
All right. So if I could have your attention back here. How was that?
Awesome.
Was it good? Was it
Oh,
was
yeah.
it easy? Was it a little bit difficult at first? But how was it?
A little difficult, but I mean, sort of always awkward to talk about yourself. So.
Which just brings up the point about practice. Practice can help a lot. So in terms of just wrapping up here, the presentation is going to go out by email.
Yeah.
But I also have hard copies here if you guys want them at the end. Also, I'm at Concordia. We have your career services. I'm going to leave these at the front about how you get access to our services. If you have any more questions about interviewing or the whole job search process, we're here for you. And yeah, I'll pass it on to the next.